It's 3 a.m. The world is asleep. But you are wide awake. Your heart is pounding. Your mind is racing. And in that silence, you feel the weight of life pressing down. Bills. Health issues. Broken dreams. The voice inside says, it's hopeless. But in that darkness, there is another voice. One that whispers a truth Florence Scovel Shinn taught decades ago. Your word is your wand. Speak it, and the universe must obey. Now this isn't magic in the way we think of fairy tales. It's a law. A principle as real as gravity. The words you speak in those lonely hours are seeds you plant into the soil of reality. Plant fear, you harvest more fear. Plant faith, you harvest miracles. The 3 a.m. command isn't about pleading or begging. It's about declaring with absolute certainty what is already yours. Think about a captain steering a ship in the dark. The waters are dangerous. The crew is nervous. If the captain says, we might sink, panic takes over. If the captain says, we are heading to safe shores, the crew moves with purpose. You are the captain of your life. And your words are your commands. At 3 a.m. when doubt tries to take the wheel, that's when you speak your command. Not with fear, but with the voice of someone who knows the universe is listening. Think about this. How did great leaders through history inspire nations? Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say, I hope one day. He said, I have a dream. Florence Scovel Shinn didn't say, maybe your words work. She said, your word is your wand. They spoke as if it were already done. And life bent itself to match their vision. Here's the formula for the 3 a.m. command. 1. Be still. Quiet the noise. 2. State your reality as if it's already true. I am wealthy. I am healed. I am guided to my perfect opportunities. 3. Repeat it until your heart believes it. 4. Go back to sleep with peace. Because when you wake, you act differently. You walk differently. You expect differently. And the universe always matches your expectation. I remember a woman who was drowning in debt. Every night she stayed up worrying. One night she read Florence Scovel Shinn's words. I am fearless in the face of any situation. At 3 a.m. she spoke it aloud. Again the next night. And the next. A week later she walked into a meeting with confidence she didn't know she had. She pitched an idea she had been too afraid to share. It turned into the opportunity that cleared her debt. Coincidence? Or did her 3 a.m. command align her mind, her actions, and the universe itself? So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone. Don't scroll. Don't sink into fear. Stand in your room. Look into the darkness. And speak your command with authority. All things are working for my good. Wealth flows to me easily and effortlessly. I am healthy. I am whole. I am unstoppable. Because at 3 a.m., the world is silent. But the universe is listening. And when you speak with faith, it must obey. Key takeaways. Your words create your reality. Speak with faith, not fear. The 3 a.m. command is a deliberate declaration of what you want as if it's already true. Speaking in certainty activates your mind and aligns your actions with your desires. History's great leaders spoke with unwavering conviction before results appeared. Your late-night thoughts are powerful seeds. Plant faith, not doubt. The universe responds to confident, consistent declarations. Let me take you deeper into the heart of the first key point, that your words create your reality, because this isn't just a nice motivational phrase, it's the thread that weaves the entire fabric of your life. Imagine for a moment that every word you speak is like the brushstroke of an artist painting the landscape of your future. Each syllable, each sentence, is dipped in a color that will eventually dry and set into the canvas of your days. Some people paint with colors of fear. I'll never get out of this mess. I'm always unlucky. Nothing good ever happens to me. And their life becomes shaded in dull, heavy tones. Others choose bolder, brighter colors. Everything I need is on its way to me. I'm capable of anything. The right opportunities always find me. And their life begins to reflect those strokes. Think of a garden in the mind. Words are seeds and the mind is the soil. If you drop in the seeds of weeds, words of doubt, resentment, hopelessness, the soil will not protest, it will grow exactly what you've planted. If you scatter seeds of beauty, words of courage, gratitude, abundance, the soil will respond in kind, nurturing them until they bloom. The mind doesn't choose for you. It doesn't say, that's a bad seed, I won't plant it. It plants whatever you give it and life grows accordingly. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say, "Your word is your wand," and she meant that literally. A wand directs energy. When you speak, you are not simply making noise. You are giving a command to the invisible forces around you, and those forces start rearranging to match your words. There's a reason why even ancient civilizations treated words as sacred. In the Old Testament, the opening act of creation begins with, "Let there be light," and there was light. Not, "I hope there will be light," or "maybe someday there will be light," but a direct command. The same pattern appears in countless traditions. The recognition that sound, vibration, and spoken declaration carry creative power. You can almost feel it when someone speaks with deep conviction. Their words don't just enter your ears, they move something inside you. Now imagine that same effect happening invisibly but on the reality around you. Picture a man named Daniel sitting alone in his small apartment. He's been unemployed for months. Each day he wakes up and mutters to himself, "I'll never find a job in this economy. It's useless." At first, those words feel like harmless venting, but slowly they start to wrap around his mind like chains. He stops applying to certain companies because, what's the point? He interviews poorly because he's already told himself he won't be hired. Without realizing it, his own words are quietly building the walls that keep him trapped. Now imagine the same man on the same couch facing the same circumstances, but one night he makes a different choice. Instead of saying, "I'll never find a job," he speaks something that feels like a lie at first. "The perfect job is already looking for me." He says it again the next morning, even though his bank account is still empty. He says it when he makes coffee. He says it before bed. Slowly, those words don't just float into the air. They begin to change the way he sees the world. He starts applying for positions he once thought were out of reach. He sends follow-up emails with more energy. He speaks in interviews with a quiet certainty that wasn't there before. And one day the call comes. A position opens up that matches his skills perfectly. To an outsider it looks like luck. But to Daniel, it feels like the echo of words he has been planting for weeks, finally blooming into reality. The truth is, most people are fluent in the language of their own limits. They've repeated phrases like, "I can't," "I'm not ready," "I'm not good enough," so many times that it has become their personal script. And just like an actor reading the same lines night after night, they keep performing the same life. To change the performance, you must first change the script. And the script is written in your words. You can see this in small, everyday moments. A child learning to ride a bike says, "I can't do it," and their body tenses, their movements become jerky and they fall. But if that same child says, "I can do it," even if they wobble at first, their posture changes, their balance improves, and their persistence increases. The shift isn't magic. It's a mental alignment. Words set the direction and action follows. Florence Scovel Shinn told the story of a woman who constantly said she couldn't afford nice clothes. Even when she had the money, she chose the cheapest things because, "I can't afford better." One day, Florence challenged her to start saying, "I have all the clothes I need and more are coming." Within weeks, she received unexpected gifts from friends, a store credit she didn't know she had, and even won a small prize in a raffle, all clothing. The woman was stunned. Florence simply said, "You changed your words." Life had to follow. If you've ever walked into a room after an argument, you felt the heaviness in the air. Words leave residue. They carry energy. When you speak negativity, you're not just making a sound, you're saturating the atmosphere around you with a vibration that matches what you said. People respond to it. Circumstances bend toward it. And the reverse is just as true. Speak hope, gratitude, and expectation, and the air around you feels lighter, more inviting, more open to possibility. It's not about pretending reality isn't hard. It's about refusing to give your difficulties the final word. If your ship is in a storm, you don't shout, "We're going to sink." You give the command to steer towards safe shores. Your current situation may not change in an instant, but your words will start shifting the current beneath you. They change how you act. They change how others respond to you. They change the opportunities that seem to randomly appear. There is a reason successful people guard their language. Athletes say, "I will win," long before the game starts. Entrepreneurs say, "This idea will work," even before the first sale. They are not being naive. They are setting the tone for the reality they want. Words are the steering wheel, and if you don't hold it with intention, you'll drift wherever the wind takes you. The beautiful thing is, you don't have to be a perfect speaker to shift your reality. You only need to be aware. The next time you catch yourself saying something that limits you, pause. Ask yourself, do I want this to grow? If the answer is no, change it on the spot. Replace, I'm so unlucky, with things are always working out for me. Replace, I can't afford this, with, I'm finding the resources I need. It might feel awkward at first, but so does steering a ship when you've been drifting for years. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes, until one day you'll notice that your life, without a grand announcement, has quietly rearranged itself to match the words you've been speaking all along. The 3 a.m. command is not a wish, it's a declaration. It's not about hoping life will give you something. It's about claiming it as if it's already here. Most people don't realize how subtle but powerful that shift is. Hope is soft. It leans forward toward something in the distance. Declaration stands tall. It speaks in the present tense. It says, it is done. When you declare something, you speak from the place of already having it, already being it, already living in it, even if your physical eyes see nothing yet. That's why this is the heart of the 3 a.m. command. It's not begging the universe for a favor, it's issuing a statement of fact that the universe has no choice but to honor. Imagine someone lost in a thick fog walking a winding path. Hope says, I wish the sun would come out so I could see where I'm going. Declaration says, the sun is shining. I'm walking in light. And even though the fog may not lift immediately, the declaration changes the way they step. They move with more certainty. They look up instead of down. They take bolder strides. That shift alone opens new routes, and eventually the fog clears. There's a scene I'll never forget from a man I once knew named Elias. He was a musician struggling to get anyone to listen to his work. At night, lying in bed, he would repeat to himself, I will be famous one day. But he said it like a dream, like a far-off fantasy. And the years passed without much change. One night, after reading a passage from Florence Scovel Shinn, he stopped himself mid-sentence. He decided he would no longer say, I will be. He sat up, put his feet on the ground, and declared, I am a world-renowned musician. My music reaches millions. Felt strange. There was no applause, no record deal waiting outside his door. But something inside him shifted. He started to introduce himself differently. Instead of saying, I'm trying to be a musician, he said, I'm a musician and my music changes lives. Within months, a video of him playing on the street went viral. A producer called. Tours followed. Did the declaration magically create fame overnight? No. But it altered his posture toward the world, and the world responded. The human mind has a strange habit of waiting for proof before speaking with certainty. We think, once I have the job, I'll call myself successful. Once I'm married, I'll say I'm loved. Once I'm healed, I'll say I'm healthy. But the 3 a.m. command flips this completely. You speak the truth you want before you see it. You speak as if the movie has already ended in your favor, even though you're still in the middle of the story. That's why it's so powerful in those 3 a.m. moments. When your mind is stripped of the day's noise and you're face to face with your deepest fears, you plant words that override the fear. Think about how a seasoned actor works. Before the performance, they step into the character, speaking and moving as if they are that person. The audience eventually believes it because the actor believed it first. Life works the same way. The universe is your audience and it responds to the role you choose to embody. If you keep speaking lines of lack, the stage is dressed for scarcity. But when you speak lines of abundance, love, and victory, the scenery begins to shift to match them. One woman told me about her battle with chronic illness. Every morning she woke up saying, I'm so tired of being sick. It wasn't that she wanted to be sick. It was her reality. But she didn't realize she was renewing that reality every single day with her words. After hearing about the 3 a.m. command, she decided to experiment. One night, awake from pain, she said aloud, I am healthy. My body is full of strength. Every cell is alive and whole. At first it felt ridiculous. Her symptoms didn't disappear that night. But she repeated it the next morning. And the next. She began eating differently, moving differently, because her words told her mind, you are a healthy person. A year later she described herself as almost unrecognizable, stronger, lighter, more vibrant than she had been in decades. The declaration didn't just influence her body. It influenced her choices, which in turn transformed her life. When you declare something as if it's already true, you bypass the part of your mind that doubts. Hope invites doubt in. Declaration leaves no seat for it. Saying, I am plants your flag in the ground. Saying, I will, puts the flag somewhere in the distance and makes you chase it endlessly. Florence Scovel Shinn warned against the someday syndrome, where blessings are always one step away. She taught that speaking in the present forces the unseen forces to arrange themselves now, not later. It's like calling a dog by name. If you say, I hope the dog comes home, you might stand there waiting. But if you call its name with certainty, you expect it to come running. Your body shifts into expectancy, you open the door, you listen for the sound of pause. That expectancy draws the result closer. The 3 a.m. command works the same way. You call your blessing home not as a request but as a fact that you are already preparing to receive. In those quiet hours of the night, your mind is raw and unguarded. The 3 a.m. command works then because the noise of the day has faded. There are no coworkers, no social media feeds, no traffic horns, just you and the vast silence. That's when fear likes to creep in, but it's also when your declaration can land the deepest. Say it in a whisper or say it like a general giving orders, but say it knowing the universe is not debating whether to listen. Sometimes people resist this idea because they think it's about lying to yourself. It's not. It's about choosing which truth you will give power to, the temporary fact of your current situation or the eternal truth of the life you are meant to have. The fact may be that your bank account is low. The truth may be that abundance is your natural state. The fact may be that you are alone. The truth may be that love is already woven into your story. The 3 a.m. command trains you to speak from the truth, not the temporary fact. I remember reading about an Olympic sprinter who, during injury recovery, would lie in bed at night and say, I am the fastest man in the world. He said it even when he could barely walk without pain. His teammates laughed. His coaches didn't discourage him, but they didn't believe him either. He kept saying it. Day after day, night after night. By the time he returned to the track, something had shifted, not just in his body but in his mind. He ran with the authority of someone who had already claimed the title. And in the next championship he won. Declaration is a decision. It's not a mood, it's not a passing phrase, it's a commitment to speak from the place of completion. And when you speak from there, you begin to act from there. You spend differently because you believe you have more than enough. You love differently because you believe you are already loved. You move differently because you believe the way is already made. And slowly, without even realizing it, the world starts to rearrange itself to reflect what you've been saying all along. Repeating your 3 a.m. command until your heart believes it is where the real transformation happens, because the first time you say it, it's just words. It might even feel hollow, like you're reciting lines from a script you don't understand. The second time it might still feel strange. The third time maybe a little less so. But something mysterious begins to happen when you keep going. Your mind starts to accept the rhythm of it. Your body begins to align with it. And one day, without warning, you don't just say it, you feel it as truth. That's the moment the ground shifts beneath you. When Florence Scovel Shinn taught this principle, she often compared it to chiseling stone. You can't expect a single tap of the hammer to carve a masterpiece. The first strike might not leave much of a mark at all, but keep striking and slowly the form appears. Every repetition of your command is another tap, shaping the invisible into something real. Your conscious mind may resist at first, throwing back doubts like, this isn't true, or you're just making this up. But repetition is persistence. And persistence has a way of breaking through walls. Think of a woman named Grace. She was terrified of public speaking. The thought alone made her hands sweat and her stomach twist. She'd been passed over for promotions at work because she refused to present in meetings. One night, awake at 3 a.m., she decided she'd had enough of living small. She whispered into the darkness, I am a confident, powerful speaker. My voice inspires others. She almost laughed at herself because her voice in that moment was shaking. But she said it again. And again. The next night she repeated it. He kept it up for weeks. Slowly she noticed changes. She spoke up more in casual conversations, she stopped avoiding eye contact. Her breathing steadied when she imagined herself in front of a crowd. Months later, when her boss unexpectedly asked her to fill in for a presentation, she felt a calm she couldn't explain. She delivered it smoothly and the room applauded. Grace didn't become a confident speaker overnight. She repeated the identity into existence until her heart owned it. This is why repetition is so important. Your subconscious mind is like a guarded gate. It doesn't let new beliefs in easily, especially if they contradict the old ones you've lived by for years. If you've told yourself you're unlucky, broke, unworthy, or not good enough, those beliefs have been reinforced through repetition, not once but thousands of times over the course of your life. One new declaration won't erase that overnight, but persistent repetition is like water wearing down rock. Day by day it carves a new path. There's a reason great athletes and performers use affirmations constantly. Muhammad Ali famously said, "I am the greatest," long before the world agreed. He didn't whisper it once and then wait. He said it over and over until it was part of his very being. Repetition isn't just about convincing your mind, it's about creating a new emotional baseline. When you've said something enough times, it becomes the lens through which you see everything. Sometimes the change is so gradual you don't notice it at first. You might start with, "I am wealthy," and for weeks feel like nothing is happening. But then one day you realize you've stopped saying, "I can't afford that," in casual conversation. You've started noticing opportunities you used to overlook. You've begun making small, confident decisions around money that you wouldn't have dared before. The declaration has slipped beneath the surface and started steering your choices without you even realizing it. One man told me about his struggle with loneliness after a painful breakup. He'd wake up at night feeling empty, convinced he'd never find love again. Then he began the practice. At 3 a.m. he'd say, "I am deeply loved and supported. My life is filled with meaningful relationships." At first it felt fake, especially lying in an empty bed. But he kept going. Something softened in him over time. He began smiling at strangers again, calling old friends, showing up to gatherings he used to avoid. Within a year he was in a new relationship, not because magic dropped someone at his door, but because his repeated command changed how he showed up in the world and the world responded in kind. The challenge with repetition is that it can feel boring. Our impatient minds want quick proof, and when we don't see it, we're tempted to stop. But that's like a farmer planting seeds and then digging them up after a week because nothing has sprouted yet. The seed doesn't just need planting, it needs consistent nurturing. Your words are the water and sunlight. The moment you stop feeding them, the growth slows. But when you keep going, daily, nightly, even when nothing seems to happen, you're creating roots you can't yet see. It's also worth noticing how repetition works in the opposite direction. Negative repetition is what keeps people trapped in cycles of failure or fear. Every time you say, "I always mess things up," you deepen that groove in your mind. Every time you mutter, "Nothing ever works out for me," you reinforce a reality that obeys that statement. The beauty of the 3 a.m. command is that it lets you flip the script on that process. If repetition can trap you, it can also free you, but you have to take control of what you're repeating. Sometimes, the moment your heart believes is so subtle you only realize it later. You'll find yourself speaking your command during the day without even thinking about it. You'll notice that when fear comes, it no longer feels like the loudest voice in the room. That's the moment you've crossed the line from trying to believe to knowing. And knowing is what bends reality. Florence Scovel Shinn would often tell people not to be discouraged if nothing seemed to happen at first. She'd say, "Your word is your wand, but a wand works because you keep it in motion." The 3 a.m. command is not a magic trick you perform once. It's a practice. And practice is what transforms. The more you speak it, the more real it becomes inside you. The more real it becomes inside you, the more it shapes the world outside you. I once heard someone describe it as tuning a radio. At first, when you turn the dial, the station is full of static. You keep turning and slowly the music becomes clearer. If you stop turning too soon, you miss the song entirely. Repetition is how you keep turning the dial until the signal of your command comes through without interference. And once it's clear, you can't unhear it. It becomes part of your life's soundtrack. So you repeat your command in the stillness of night, even when your voice shakes. You repeat it in the morning while brushing your teeth. You repeat it walking to your car, making coffee, waiting in line. You say it until it doesn't feel like a line from a self-help book, but like the most natural statement in the world. You say it until your heart beats in rhythm with the words. You say it until everything in you agrees, "This is who I am, this is what my life is." And from that agreement, the world begins to move. Throughout history, the people who have changed the course of nations, inspired movements, or shifted the hearts of millions all shared one common trait. They spoke as if the thing they envisioned was already real. They didn't present their ideas as possibilities hanging in the distance. They declared them as present realities. This is why the 3 a.m. command is not just some modern self-help trick. It is the very language of leaders, visionaries, and creators throughout time. When Martin Luther King Jr. stood before thousands in Washington, he didn't say, "I hope one day we will live in a better world." He said, "I have a dream." Those words carried a weight that hope alone could never match. "I have" is ownership. "I have claims." "I have" says the world must catch up to what I already see. That is what makes people lean forward and listen, and it is also what makes the unseen forces of life respond. Think about Winston Churchill in the early days of World War II. Britain was under threat, the future looked grim, and fear hung in the air like smoke. Churchill didn't stand in Parliament and say, "We will try not to lose." He said, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." His words carried certainty, not because the outcome was guaranteed in that moment, but because he understood that conviction must come before victory. If a leader speaks with doubt, the people will live in doubt. If a leader speaks with certainty, the people find courage to act. And if you think about it, you are the leader of your own life. The way you speak about your future is the way your mind, your actions, and even those around you will follow. Florence Scovel Shinn knew this well when she taught her students to replace vague wishes with direct affirmations. She told them, "Never voice lack or limitation. Speak abundance, speak completion, speak victory." It's not that she ignored reality, she simply refused to give her power to a version of reality she did not want to keep. History shows us that's not denial, it's leadership of thought. When John F. Kennedy stood before Congress in 1961 and said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade," the technology didn't exist yet, the plans weren't finished, and the risks were enormous. But he didn't say, "We hope to go to the moon." He said, "We choose." That single declaration set in motion an entire decade of effort that eventually made it real. The same applies on a smaller, personal scale. I once knew a woman named Amara who wanted to open her own bakery. For years she told herself, "One day I'll have my own shop," but one day kept stretching into the horizon. Then, inspired by reading about the 3 a.m. command, she began to say, "I am the owner of a thriving bakery." She said it every morning, every night, even while working her day job. At first it felt like a game, but soon she began acting differently. She started pricing equipment, talking to suppliers, testing recipes more seriously. She met someone at a networking event who connected her with a space she could afford. Within a year she had the bakery she'd been talking about for a decade. The difference wasn't luck. It was the moment she shifted from "someday" to "I am." The power in historical examples lies in their clarity. They show us that certainty of speech often comes before evidence, not after it. People sometimes resist this idea because they feel they're being dishonest by speaking something that isn't visible yet. But think about how engineers speak about a building before it's constructed. They say, "This is the tallest tower in the city," while pointing at a bare plot of land. They have the plans. They see the vision. They know that once the pieces are assembled, the building will stand exactly where they've said it will. Speaking it doesn't make them liars, it makes them committed. When Florence talked about "your word is your wand," she wasn't just referring to spiritual mysticism. She was pointing to the same principle that leaders, inventors, and creators have used for centuries. Words lead energy. Energy leads action. Action shapes reality. Thomas Edison didn't say, "I hope to find a way to create electric light." He spoke and acted as a man who was going to do it, no matter how many failed attempts it took. His certainty kept his mind open to solutions long after someone with weaker language would have quit. And this is the deeper truth. Your words don't just inspire others, they program your own mind. When you speak as if something is already real, your subconscious begins to align your thoughts and decisions to make it so. It's like setting a destination in a GPS. Even if you take a wrong turn, it recalculates and keeps guiding you toward that point. Without a declared destination, you drift. With one, every move starts to have direction. The danger in speaking tentatively is that it leaves too much room for retreat. If you say, "I'll try to start my business," you've already given yourself an exit. If you say, "I am building my business," you've closed the back door and told your mind there is only forward. That's what great leaders do. They burn the ships behind them so there's no going back. Cortez, upon arriving in the New World, famously ordered his men to burn their ships so retreat was impossible. That is what declaration does for the soul. It removes the option of failure as a final destination. There's also something magnetic about conviction. People and opportunities are drawn to it. A hesitant voice doesn't attract much, but a steady, confident voice draws attention. When Florence's students began speaking their affirmations with authority, they often found that help appeared from unexpected places. Someone offering a resource, an introduction, a chance meeting that opened a door. It wasn't magic in the fairy tale sense. It was the natural response of the world to the energy of certainty. Think about it. Would you rather follow a guide in the wilderness who says, "I think the trail is this way," or one who says, "This is the way, follow me"? Your life, your mind, and even the invisible forces around you want a clear command. If you're always speaking in maybe, someday, and I hope, you're essentially telling the universe, "I'm not sure. Keep me waiting until I am." But if you speak as if you already hold the thing you desire, you're giving a clear order for everything around you to align. History has shown again and again that the world eventually bows to those who speak as if it already belongs to them. That's not arrogance, it's faith expressed through language. Faith is the bridge between the unseen and the seen, and words are the planks that build it. Every "I am" statement is another plank, another step forward. And the moment you step onto that bridge with confidence, you set in motion the very events that make it solid under your feet. So when you think about the great figures of history, remember that they didn't just act boldly, they spoke boldly first. They gave their vision a voice, and that voice rang louder than doubt, circumstance, or opposition. You have that same capacity. You don't have to lead a nation to speak like a leader. You only have to lead your own life with the kind of language that claims what you want before it arrives. Because once you speak it with certainty, you've already taken the first, most crucial step toward making it real. Late at night, when the rest of the world is still, your thoughts take on a different kind of weight. They're sharper, heavier, and far more fertile than they are during the busy hours of the day. At 3 a.m. there are no meetings to attend, no errands to run, no conversations to distract you. It's just you and the raw, unfiltered dialogue in your own mind. That's why what you plant in those moments matters so much. Those thoughts are seeds, and because the soil of your mind is quiet and open, they sink deeper than the ones you scatter in the noise of daylight. Plant fear in that hour and it grows quickly. Plant faith and it grows even faster. The 3 a.m. hour is not just a random time. It's the moment when the subconscious is most receptive, when the barriers between thought and belief are thin enough for your words to slip through. I remember hearing about a man named Victor who had a habit of lying awake at night replaying every mistake he'd ever made. His mind was like a projector that looped scenes of failure. The job he lost, the marriage that ended, the opportunities he missed. At 3 a.m. he'd whisper to himself without even realizing it, "I'm such a failure. Nothing ever works out for me." He didn't understand that in those quiet hours, those words were not just venting, they were instructions. His mind was listening. His spirit was listening. And because there was no external noise to dilute them, those words became seeds that sprouted into more of the same. When Florence Scovel Shinn wrote about the power of words, she wasn't speaking only about affirmations in the middle of a busy day. She understood that the words you speak in solitude, especially in moments of vulnerability, are some of the most powerful you'll ever speak. Think about it like this. In the middle of a crowded marketplace, if you toss a seed onto the ground, it might get trampled or lost. But if you plant that seed in a quiet, freshly tilled garden, it will take root easily. That's what the mind is like at 3 a.m., quiet, open, and ready to grow whatever you put into it. Now imagine if Victor had replaced those quiet, destructive words with a command of faith. Everything in my life is turning in my favor. I am guided. I am blessed beyond measure. Imagine him saying that night after night until the sound of it felt normal. The first few times his mind would resist. It would try to bring up evidence to contradict him. But over time, those words would start to push back against the old weeds in his mental garden, and eventually they would take over. One woman I knew used this exact principle when she was going through a health crisis. Every night, pain would wake her, and her mind's first instinct was to say, "This is getting worse." But she had learned about the potency of those nighttime thoughts, so she made herself say instead, "I am healed. My body is whole. Every cell is thriving." At first it felt forced, like she was lying. But she noticed something. Saying it at 3 a.m. in the quiet carried a kind of intimacy that daytime repetition didn't. It felt like she was speaking directly to the deepest part of herself. Slowly her actions shifted. She started treating herself like someone who was healing. Changing her diet, resting more intentionally, moving her body gently. Months later, her health markers improved drastically. She believed the turning point wasn't the diet alone, but the way she began to speak to herself in the still hours. This is the choice everyone faces in those moments. At 3 a.m. your mind is not neutral. It is absorbing. The thoughts you choose aren't fleeting, they echo. That's why people who wake up with worry often find themselves living lives shaped by that worry. And people who wake up with faith, gratitude, or bold declarations often see those things multiply in their reality. You can see it in small things too. A person who wakes up in the night thinking, "I'll never get ahead," will likely go through the next day noticing every setback and missing every opportunity. A person who wakes thinking, "Everything is falling into place for me," will notice openings, solutions, and small wins that others overlook. It's almost like setting a compass. At 3 a.m. you have the chance to point that compass in any direction you choose. Once it's set, the rest of the day, and eventually the rest of your life, follows that heading. But here's the part most people don't realize. The compass doesn't just point toward where you want to go, it points toward what you consistently think and speak. If those thoughts are laced with fear, the compass heads toward more situations that validate fear. If those thoughts are saturated with faith, the compass steers toward experiences that validate faith. Florence used to say that the subconscious mind is like a ship's crew, and your conscious words are the captain's orders. At night, when the captain's voice is the only sound in the stillness, the crew takes those instructions very seriously. Imagine a captain shouting into the dark sea, "We are heading for disaster." The crew scrambles to steer the ship in that direction, obeying without question. Now imagine the same captain saying, "We are safely sailing to our destination, the seas are calm and the shore is near." The crew will work with that vision. Your words at 3 a.m. are the captain's orders to the crew of your subconscious, and they will navigate accordingly. There's a story about a man who was in deep financial trouble. He had been trying to fix it during the day, making calls, applying for jobs, looking for ways to make money, but nothing worked. At night, he would wake up in a panic thinking, "I'm going to lose everything." One night, instead of letting that thought take over, he said out loud, "Wealth flows to me easily and endlessly. I have more than I need." He didn't believe it at first, but he kept repeating it every time he woke. After a few weeks, something shifted. He approached an old contact about work, something he would never have thought to do before, and that led to a series of contracts that changed his situation. He believed the opportunity had always been there, but he couldn't see it when his 3 a.m. thoughts were clouded with fear. What makes those moments so critical is the lack of interference. In the day, your declarations have to compete with phone calls, noise, obligations, and other people's opinions. At 3 a.m. the channel is clear. There's no static. It's just you, your words, and the deep part of your mind that's always listening. If you use that moment to plant faith, you give it the best possible environment to grow. So the next time you wake in the small hours, don't waste that time on worry. Recognize it as an open doorway, a moment when your words can walk straight into the fertile soil of your subconscious. Stand in that darkness or lie there in silence and speak what you want as though it is already yours. Speak it with authority, not desperation. Speak it knowing that in the stillness, your voice carries further than it ever could in the chaos of the day. And understand that every time you do, you are planting seeds that will shape the landscape of your future. There's a subtle magic in the moment you stop trying to force life into your plan and start allowing life to flow through you. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about shifting from a frantic, clenched fist control to a calm, open-handed trust. It's like standing in a river. If you thrash against the current, you exhaust yourself and go nowhere. But if you trust the water to carry you, you begin to move effortlessly toward places you couldn't have reached on your own. People often misunderstand this, thinking that surrender means sitting back and doing nothing, but real surrender is deeply active. It's a decision to align yourself with a higher rhythm, a deeper intelligence, a pattern that's been moving long before you arrived and will keep moving long after you're gone. I remember a woman named Sarah who had spent years trying to make her business work. She read every strategy book, hired coaches, worked late nights, and pushed herself harder than anyone thought possible. And yet, the more she tried to force results, the more doors seemed to close. She admitted once, "It felt like I was banging on a locked door with my bare hands." Then something shifted. One evening, after yet another day of failed pitches, she sat in silence, too tired to fight. She whispered to herself, "I release this. I've done what I can. I trust that what's mine will come." She didn't stop working, but she stopped pushing with desperation. In the weeks that followed, a client found her through a chance introduction, then another and another. The very flow she had been trying to wrestle into shape began to carry her forward the moment she stopped resisting it. There's an old saying, when you let go of the rope, you stop the tug of war. Imagine you've been pulling on that rope for years, and the more you pull, the more the other side resists. The tension is exhausting, your hands are burned, and yet you keep thinking, if I just pull harder, I'll win. But the moment you let go, you realize the other side was never holding anything you truly needed. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means stepping into a space where struggle no longer defines your movement. Florence Scovel Shinn often wrote about the law of non-resistance, the idea that you don't need to batter down doors meant for you. They open when you arrive at the right time. Resistance is often rooted in fear. We fear that if we don't control every detail, life will collapse. But think of how many times in your life the best things came in ways you could not have predicted, and often after you stopped trying so hard to control them. There's a rhythm to these moments, like the way seasons change without your intervention. You don't shout at the trees to grow leaves in spring. They do it naturally because the conditions are right. A man named Daniel told me once that surrendering saved his marriage. For years he tried to fix every problem by lecturing, persuading, and pushing his wife to change. I thought if I could just say the right thing, she'd see what I saw, he said. But his constant effort made her feel cornered, and the more he pushed, the further she drifted. One day, after another argument, he decided to let go, not of his marriage but of his need to control the outcome. He began to listen without judgment, to create space instead of pressure. Over time she began to open up. What years of force could not accomplish, a few months of openness and trust allowed to happen naturally. This is the paradox. The tighter you grip, the more things slip through your fingers. Sand held gently stays in your palm. Clench your fist and it escapes. Life is like that sand. The moment you trust it enough to hold it lightly, it stays with you longer. Opportunities, relationships, ideas, they thrive in the space of trust and wither in the chokehold of fear. Surrender also allows you to see paths you couldn't see before. When your mind is locked into one fixed way that things must happen, you become blind to every other route. It's like standing in a forest at night with a flashlight pointed at one tree. You miss the entire landscape because your focus is too narrow. When you release that fixation, it's as if the moon comes out and you can see the whole forest. Suddenly, solutions you never considered appear in front of you. There's a quiet kind of power in saying, I trust life to bring me what's right for me in the right time and way. It's not an excuse to be careless. It's an invitation to work with life instead of against it. This trust changes the energy you carry into your actions. Desperation has a scent. People can sense it in your words, your tone, your presence. But so does confidence. Not the loud, showy kind, but the steady confidence of someone who knows they're on the right track even if the destination isn't yet visible. That kind of energy draws people in. One example I'll never forget was a musician who had been trying to get signed for years. He chased every contact, begged for meetings, played gigs he hated, and still nothing happened. Finally, frustrated, he decided to just play music he loved without worrying about whether it would get him signed. He started recording from his apartment, posting songs online simply because they made him happy. Within months, one of those songs went viral and a record label contacted him. He said later, "The moment I stopped trying to be discovered and just enjoyed the music, that's when they found me." When you let go, you don't lose control. You hand it over to something wiser than you. Call it God, the universe, divine timing, or simply the intelligence of life itself. Whatever name you give it, it operates best when you stop trying to micromanage every detail. It's the difference between paddling upstream and letting the current carry you downstream. You still steer the boat. You just don't waste your strength fighting the natural flow. The most beautiful part is that surrender often brings peace long before it brings results. You may not have the job, the relationship, the health, or the opportunity you want yet, but you'll find yourself breathing easier. That's when you know you've shifted from fear to trust. When peace arrives even before the answer does. And often, that peace is the very thing that clears the path for the answer to appear. So many people live in a constant state of mental tension, convinced that their effort is the only thing holding their world together. But the truth is, there's a larger structure at play, one that doesn't crumble just because you rest your hands for a moment. And sometimes, it's in that rest, in that quiet pause, that the missing pieces slide into place without your pushing at all. When you practice letting go, you start to notice small confirmations, coincidences, chance encounters, unexpected breaks, that remind you you're not moving alone. The right people show up, the right ideas spark, the right opportunities unfold, and you realize these things were always trying to reach you, but your resistance had been blocking the way. The river was always flowing. You were always meant to reach the ocean. And the moment you stop fighting the current, you feel yourself being carried not because you've stopped moving but because you've finally learned the art of moving with something greater than yourself. And there we have it. If even one idea today sparked something inside you, imagine what a whole journey of these insights could do for your life. Hit that subscribe button not because I asked, but because your future self will thank you for every single truth you choose to hear today. Like this video to keep the energy flowing and drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice might be the spark someone else needs. Tell me this. What's the one belief you're ready to let go of so life can finally open new doors for you? Have you ever stood at the base of a huge mountain and thought, that's impossible? That's exactly how most people feel about wealth, success, and their biggest dreams. Too high, too far, too hard. But here's the truth the rich already know. You don't climb a mountain in one giant leap. You take it one step at a time. Florence Scovel Shinn said, every great work, every great accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision and building for it step by step. Think about the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Do you think the workers woke up one day and said, let's build the entire thing this week? Of course not. They started with a single stone. One block, then another, and another. Over time, that small beginning became a wonder of the world. Your dreams are the same. If you don't dare to think big, you'll never have a reason to start small. And if you don't start small, your big dream will forever stay a dream. Here's something fascinating. Many self-made millionaires didn't start with millions. They started with a small business, a side hustle, even a single idea scribbled on paper. Howard Schultz. Before Starbucks became a global name, it was a small coffee shop in Seattle. He thought big, but started small. Jeff Bezos. Amazon began in a garage selling only books. One product. One category. One small step toward something massive. They didn't wait until everything was perfect. They acted with what they had, where they were, right then. Do you know why most people never see their dreams come alive? It's not because they think too big. It's because they never take the small first step. They tell themselves, I need more money before I start. I need more time. I need the perfect plan. But here's the secret. You don't need the perfect plan. You need movement. A tiny action is more powerful than a perfect intention. Close your eyes for a second and imagine, a year from now, if you took one small step toward your dream every single day, where would you be? Would you have written the first chapter of that book? Launched your small business? Paid off half your debt? Changed your life? The rich don't wait for the right time. They create the time. They build momentum. And momentum, once it starts, is unstoppable. Do you know who invented the light bulb? Yes, Thomas Edison. But did you know he failed over 1,000 times before getting it right? He didn't think, I need the perfect bulb now. He thought, I'll test one more idea. Just one more. Small steps. Relentlessly repeated. That's the path to extraordinary success. So today I want you to remember this. Think big, because your mind needs a destination. Start small, because your heart needs a win. Dreams aren't built in a day. They're built daily. Your first step doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be taken. So go home today. Write down your big dream. Then write the smallest possible action you can take now to move toward it. And do it. Not tomorrow. Not next week. No. Because the secret to success isn't just thinking big. Starting small, and never stopping. Key takeaways. Big dreams give you direction. Without them, small steps feel meaningless. If small beginnings create momentum. Even the richest people started with limited resources. Perfection is a trap. Action matters more than flawless planning. Consistency compounds. Small daily actions lead to massive results over time. Failure is feedback. Every setback teaches the next step forward. Start now. Waiting for the right time is the fastest way to kill a dream. Let me take you into a moment in time, one that's happened to almost all of us. Imagine you're sitting by yourself late at night. Maybe it's your room, maybe it's your office, maybe it's your car parked quietly on the side of the road. Everything around you is still, but inside your head, it's loud. You start thinking about the life you truly want. Not the life you've settled for, not the one you've been told is realistic, but but the one that makes your heart beat faster just imagining it. Maybe it's owning your dream home by the ocean, with the sound of the waves greeting you every morning. Maybe it's building a business that doesn't just make money but leaves a mark on the world. Maybe it's traveling with no restrictions, seeing places most people only ever see in photographs. You can see it in your mind so vividly, like a movie you've watched 100 times. But then, almost instantly, something happens. A voice, quiet but sharp, cuts in. Who are you kidding? That's too big. That's not for someone like you. And just like that, the picture fades, replaced by the weight of everyday obligations and the safe, small goals you've convinced yourself are enough. That's what happens when you stop thinking big. Without a big vision, you settle for what's in front of you. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "A man's word is his wand, but I believe a person's vision is the map." Without a map, every step you take feels random, every effort feels scattered. Think about it. Would you ever get into a car for a cross-country trip without knowing your destination? Of course not. You'd waste time, gas, and energy driving in circles. And yet, that's how most people live their lives. Small aim, small direction, small outcome. The wealthy, the fulfilled, the ones who inspire us, they think differently. They don't start with what's in their bank account or the limits of their current situation. They start with the end in mind. Take Walt Disney. Before Disneyland was even a thing, he would sit and sketch worlds no one had ever imagined. Castles, talking animals, parades of color and music. People told him it was ridiculous. At one point, a banker refused him a loan, saying, "It's just too big. It's too unrealistic." But Disney wasn't aiming to build a small carnival or a local amusement ride. He was aiming for a place where adults could feel like kids again, where imagination was the law of the land. That vision, huge, outrageous, impossible to some, was the reason he could take the first small, humble steps. He started with short animated films, then a feature-length cartoon, then more ambitious projects. But without that original giant vision, none of those smaller milestones would have meant anything. I once spoke to a man who had built a chain of restaurants worth millions. When I asked him how it started, he smiled and told me something I never forgot. "I didn't start with the idea of one restaurant. I started with the idea of creating a place that people in every city in the country would talk about." That vision made me ask myself, what's the first small thing I can do to start moving toward that? And that small thing was a single food cart on a busy street corner. A cart doesn't look like an empire. But an empire will never be built if you can't see it first in your mind. The mind is an incredible architect. Every invention, every work of art, every skyscraper and piece of technology you see around you started as an invisible picture in someone's head. Steve Jobs didn't just see a phone. He saw a sleek, powerful device that could fit in your pocket, connect you to the world, and become part of your life in ways people couldn't imagine at the time. He didn't know all the steps, but he knew the destination. And because he thought big, he was willing to take the small, imperfect actions to get there. Without a big dream, the small steps will feel like chores. You'll quit when they get boring. You'll stop when they get hard. But when the destination burns brightly enough in your mind, the steps, no matter how small, start to feel like part of something important. The late night studying, the saving of a single dollar, the phone calls no one wants to make. They all matter because they're carrying you toward something larger than the moment you're in. Think about a sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. To anyone else, it's just a block, cold, solid, lifeless. But in the sculptor's mind, there's already a masterpiece inside. Every chip, every strike of the hammer, is done with the final statue in mind. If you can't see the masterpiece, chipping away at the stone feels like pointless labor. But if you can see it, every strike is progress. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people aren't stuck because they don't work hard. They're stuck because they're working hard on something too small. They've set goals so tiny, so uninspiring that even if they reach them, nothing will change. That's why big dreams matter. They pull you forward. They lift you over obstacles. They give you a reason to get out of bed when you'd rather stay under the covers. There's a line in the Bible that says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." It's not about physical death. It's about a slow fading of the soul. Without something bigger to aim for, life becomes an endless loop of just getting by. And yet, history is filled with proof that ordinary people, people with no special advantage, have achieved extraordinary things simply because they dared to see further than the horizon. A young man in Kentucky once dreamed of becoming a world-famous actor. But he had a stutter so bad that people laughed when he spoke. Instead of shrinking his dream to something reasonable, he decided to attack the problem. He read poetry aloud every day. He practiced in front of a mirror until his mouth obeyed his mind. That young man was James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader and Mufasa. Without that big dream pulling him forward, the struggle would have felt pointless. So when I tell you to think big, I'm not talking about blind ambition or greed. I'm talking about giving your life a target so big that the small things you do today matter. I'm talking about creating a vision so vivid that when life throws obstacles at you, and it will, you'll still keep moving because the mountain is worth the climb. And here's the beautiful thing. Thinking big costs nothing. It's free to dream about the life you want. It's free to imagine yourself standing in the moment you've always wished for. The cost comes in the small daily steps. And those steps feel lighter when they're leading to something that makes your heart race. When you strip away the noise of doubt, the distractions, the reasons why it can't be done, and you allow yourself to think big, really big, you start to feel something shift inside. You stop asking, what's possible? And start asking, what do I truly want? That question alone can change the direction of your life, because once you know where you're going, you'll always find the steps to get there, no matter how small they may be. Picture this. A young woman stands in a cramped kitchen, barely big enough for two people to move around without bumping into each other. She's wearing a faded apron, hair tied back, hands dusted with flour. Outside, the city traffic is relentless, but in here, there's just the smell of bread baking and the quiet hum of a dream she hasn't told many people about. She wants to open her own bakery one day. Not just a little shop, but a place people will travel across town for. A warm, light-filled space where every pastry feels like home. But right now, she doesn't have the capital, the connections, or the confidence to jump into such a huge goal. All she has is her kitchen, a second-hand oven, and a few loyal friends who love her bread. So she starts small. She takes custom orders for neighbors, delivers them on weekends, and slowly something happens. People talk. They tell their friends. One order turns into 5 into 20. She hasn't built the bakery yet, but she's building something just as important. Momentum. That's the thing about starting small. People think it's a limitation. They see it as a sign they're not ready, not capable, not big enough to matter. But the truth? Starting small is one of the richest advantages you can have. The wealthy, the self-made, the people who seem to have the magic touch. They understand this. They know that beginning with a tiny, manageable step lets you experiment, adapt, and grow without risking everything at once. It gives you space to learn in real time. Florence Scovel Shinn often spoke about the law of growth, how everything in nature begins as a seed. No oak tree appears fully grown. No flower bursts open in a single moment. Everything powerful begins in a form that seems fragile. Look at Howard Schultz before Starbucks became the Starbucks you know today. He didn't start with a chain of thousands of stores. He didn't even start with his own store. He worked for a small coffee company in Seattle and was inspired by a trip to Italy where he saw coffee houses acting as community hubs. He didn't rush into creating a global empire. He started with one shop, one location, one opportunity to test his vision. And because he started small, he could pour his attention into perfecting the details. He could experiment with the menu, with customer experience, with the very feeling people had when they walked through the door. That focus would have been impossible if he'd tried to open hundreds of locations right away. Or take Jeff Bezos. It's almost impossible to think of Amazon as anything other than a giant now. Warehouses the size of cities, drones delivering packages, millions of products. But in the beginning, Amazon sold books. Just books. Bezos famously set up his first desk in his garage and even used doors as tabletops to save money. One category. One focus. One small start that allowed him to test his business model before scaling into the behemoth we know today. He once said, "We are stubborn on vision. We are flexible on details." Starting small gives you the space to be flexible without losing sight of the bigger dream. There's a certain magic in small beginnings because they remove the illusion that you have to be perfect from the start. Think of it like learning to play an instrument. You wouldn't pick up a guitar for the first time and expect to play at a sold-out concert. You'd start in your room, fingers clumsy on the strings, making mistakes and laughing at yourself. In that safe space, you'd learn the chords, build calluses, and slowly turn noise into music. In the same way, starting small with your dream lets you practice without the crushing weight of massive expectations. People sometimes mistake slow beginnings for failure. They compare their day 1 to someone else's year 10 and think, "I'm so far behind." But the wealthy know better. They see small beginnings as proof of commitment. They understand that each step, no matter how tiny, compounds over time. A small investment grows because of interest. A small audience grows because of trust. A small skill grows because of repetition. And that growth becomes exponential in ways you can't predict at the start. I remember meeting a man at a conference who now runs a multimillion-dollar fitness brand. He told me that his very first gym was a spare room in his apartment with a single weight rack and a treadmill. No fancy branding, no membership plans, no advertisements. Just him training a handful of clients and learning what worked. That room didn't just build his income, it built his expertise. By the time he could afford a larger space, he already knew exactly what his customers wanted. That's the secret edge small starts give you. The ability to grow smarter, not just bigger. There's also a hidden emotional advantage to starting small. Big leaps can be overwhelming, even paralyzing. If you tell yourself you have to achieve everything at once, fear will keep you from moving at all. But when you shrink your focus to the smallest possible step, the fear becomes manageable. You can say, I may not be able to open 10 stores right now, but I can set up one booth at the local market. That action builds confidence. And confidence is like a muscle. It grows stronger the more you use it. Think of a snowball at the top of a hill. At first it's small, almost laughably so. You could hold it in one hand. But as it rolls, it picks up snow, getting bigger, heavier, faster. That's momentum. And momentum is the single most powerful force in any pursuit of success. Once you have it, it carries you forward, often faster than you expected. The rich know that momentum rarely comes from a giant leap. It comes from consistent, small actions done well over time. Sometimes people hold back because they don't want to be seen starting small. They fear judgment. They don't want friends or strangers to see them at the beginner stage. But every success story has that stage, even if you didn't witness it. You didn't see Oprah Winfrey hosting a tiny radio show before she became a media icon. You didn't see Elon Musk coding in a small rented office before leading multiple companies. The start was humble, but the vision was massive. Small beginnings are also more forgiving. If you make a mistake when you're starting small, it won't sink you. You can learn, adjust, and try again without the crushing consequences that can come from a huge, untested launch. It's like learning to sail in a quiet harbor before heading into the open ocean. The wealthy often protect their downside by testing ideas on a small scale first, then expanding once they've proven themselves. In the end, starting small isn't about thinking small. It's about building a foundation so strong that when the weight of your dream finally arrives, it can hold it. It's about planting seeds that might seem insignificant today but will grow into something extraordinary if nurtured. It's about giving yourself permission to begin without waiting for the perfect time, the perfect resources, or the perfect plan. And maybe that's the greatest secret of all. That the small step you take today, sending one email, making one sale, writing one page, might not look like much now, but years from today you'll look back and see that it was the moment everything began to change. That's why the rich don't despise small beginnings. They treasure them. They know that from those humble starts, entire worlds are built. There's a story I once heard about a man who carried a notebook everywhere he went. It wasn't a fancy leather journal, just a plain spiral-bound pad with coffee stains on the cover. He had this habit of writing down ideas whenever they came to him, no matter how strange, how small, or how incomplete they seemed. One day he wrote an idea for a small app that could help people remember birthdays and anniversaries. Nothing groundbreaking. Nothing that screamed billion-dollar business. But instead of sitting on it, he built a basic version over a weekend and shared it with a few friends. Those friends shared it with their friends. It took off, and within a year he'd quit his job to run the business full-time. When I asked him what made him different from everyone else who has ideas, he said something I never forgot. I didn't wait for the perfect version. I just started with what I had. That's when it hit me. Most people never start because they're obsessed with perfection. Perfection is seductive. It whispers to you, don't show the world your work until it's flawless. Don't begin until every detail is just right. But that whisper is a trap. It's the reason manuscripts sit unfinished in drawers, businesses die as concepts in people's heads, and dreams wither before they ever take root. The truth is, the perfect plan is a myth. There will always be unknowns, always something you could improve, always a reason to wait. And the more you wait, the heavier the fear gets until it convinces you not to start at all. The wealthy understand this in a way most people don't. They know action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be, and that bridge doesn't have to be beautifully built before you cross it. They act with incomplete information, take imperfect steps, and adjust along the way. Richard Branson didn't know everything about running an airline before launching Virgin Atlantic. He famously rented a plane to test the idea after a flight was cancelled. That first flight wasn't perfect, but it gave him something priceless: proof that it could work. It's like sailing. You can sit in the harbor forever waiting for the exact right wind, the perfect weather, the most advanced navigation tools. Or you can raise the sail and start moving, knowing you can adjust your course once you're out there. Perfection keeps you tied to the dock. Action gets you to the horizon. I remember talking to a woman who had been wanting to start her own podcast for 2 years. She kept saying she was almost ready. She was researching equipment, testing software, taking voice lessons. She told herself she was preparing, but what she was really doing was hiding. One day, a friend challenged her to just record the first episode on her phone. No script, no fancy mic, and upload it that same day. It was raw, unpolished, and a little awkward, but people listened. They sent her messages saying how much they loved the honesty and vulnerability. That one imperfect step gave her the momentum to keep going. 2 years of planning hadn't done that. The irony is that perfection often works against you because it isolates you from feedback. If you spend months, even years, crafting something in secret, you risk building in the wrong direction entirely. Starting small and imperfectly lets you see what works and what doesn't while the stakes are low. The first iPhone wasn't perfect. It didn't even have copy and paste. But Apple released it anyway, learned from real users, and kept improving. Imagine if they'd waited for a flawless version. They would have missed their moment. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Do not neglect the day of small things." I think about that whenever I see someone paralyzed by the idea that their first attempt needs to be amazing. Those small, imperfect steps are not embarrassing, they're essential. They're how you learn the terrain. They're how you figure out what your audience actually wants, what your customers actually need, what you're actually capable of. Without them, you're just guessing in the dark. Fear of imperfection often comes from worrying about what other people will think. You imagine the whispers, the raised eyebrows, the smirks. But here's the truth. Most people are too busy thinking about their own lives to judge yours for long. And even if they do, their opinions won't pay your bills, won't build your dream, won't give you the life you want. The people who succeed don't aim to avoid criticism, they aim to outgrow it. I once met a street artist in New York who sold hand-painted postcards for a few dollars each. He told me that when he first started, his paintings were rough and inconsistent. "If I'd waited until I was good," he laughed, "I'd still be waiting." But by painting and selling every day, even when the work wasn't his best, he got better faster than he ever would have alone in his apartment, practicing in private. Those imperfect postcards paid his rent and became stepping stones to bigger commissions and gallery shows. Starting before you're ready also changes your relationship with fear. When you act despite imperfection, you teach yourself that you can survive mistakes, that you can adapt. You realize failure isn't the end, it's a teacher. Thomas Edison didn't create a working light bulb on his first try or his 100th. Each failure gave him data. "I have not failed," he said. "I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's not just persistence. That's understanding that progress lives inside imperfection. Here's the secret the rich and successful know. Your first version is not your final version. It's the ticket in the door. Once you're in, you can improve, refine, expand. But you can't improve what doesn't exist. A blank page cannot be edited. A business that never launches cannot pivot. A dream that stays in your head can't grow. The biggest regret I hear from people isn't, "I tried and it didn't work." It's, "I never tried because I thought I wasn't ready." Years later, they see someone else doing the exact thing they dreamed of, and they realize the only difference was action. Someone else was willing to be imperfect in public. Someone else was willing to start messy and figure it out along the way. Perfection is a luxury you earn after you begin. In the early stages, speed matters more than polish. Connection matters more than flawless execution. Showing up matters more than showing off. The people who win are the ones who can move forward with what they have, trusting that they'll gather what they need along the way. So when you find yourself hesitating, waiting for the right moment, remember this. The right moment doesn't come, it's made. It's made by taking the first imperfect step, by doing the thing badly before you can do it well, by getting in the game while everyone else is still standing on the sidelines. Those who wait for perfection will be waiting forever. Those who move even clumsily will lap them without even trying. And maybe that's the quiet truth most people miss. Not starting because you're afraid of imperfection guarantees one thing: you'll stay exactly where you are. But starting now, starting imperfectly, starting scared, that's the doorway to every single thing you've ever wanted. I want you to picture a small jar. Inside it are a handful of coins, nothing special, maybe just a few dollars worth. It doesn't look like much, certainly not enough to change your life. But imagine you drop a coin into that jar every single day. Some days it's just one coin. Other days you toss in a few extra. Weeks pass. Months pass. One day, without even realizing it, you look inside and it's full. What started as almost nothing has quietly grown into something significant. That's what consistency does. It takes small, almost invisible actions and, over time, turns them into something so much bigger than the sum of their parts. The wealthy understand this better than anyone. They know that success is rarely the result of one massive leap. It's the outcome of hundreds, even thousands of tiny steps stacked on top of each other. The compounding effect of daily action is like a snowball rolling downhill. At first it's slow, almost unimpressive, just a small clump. But every rotation adds more snow. Every turn increases its size and weight. Eventually it's unstoppable. But here's the catch: you can't see the magic in the early stages. That's where most people give up. I once met a writer who told me that his first book didn't come from bursts of inspiration or long weekends of writing. It came from a simple habit: 500 words a day. Sometimes he wrote them in the morning with a fresh cup of coffee. Sometimes he squeezed them in before bed, exhausted from his day job. Many of those words were bad, he admitted that freely, but he wrote them anyway. At the end of a year he had over 180,000 words on paper. Enough to cut, edit, and shape into a published book. The interesting thing? If you had looked at any single day, it didn't seem like much. But strung together, those small acts built something huge. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke often about the law of growth, that you reap what you sow. But she also implied something deeper. You reap in proportion to what you consistently plant. A seed that's watered every day will grow into a tree. A seed watered once in a while will dry out in the soil. It's not the occasional burst of effort that changes your life. It's the daily, often unglamorous, commitment to keep going. Think about athletes. The difference between good and great isn't found in one extraordinary workout. It's in the years of showing up to practice, even when no one is watching, even when they're tired, even when progress feels invisible. Kobe Bryant was famous for arriving at the gym before sunrise, practicing the same shot over and over until it was muscle memory. That kind of repetition doesn't look exciting from the outside. It's not Instagram-worthy. But it's why, under the brightest lights and the most intense pressure, he could deliver. In business, the same rule applies. I knew a man who started an online store selling handmade leather wallets. In the beginning, he had just a few orders a week. It was slow, discouraging even. But instead of chasing shortcuts or trying to blow up overnight, he focused on one consistent action: adding one new product listing every week. That was it. Over time, his store grew from a handful of products to hundreds. Search engines started sending him traffic. Word of mouth spread. Years later, he was running a six-figure business that began with nothing more than showing up every single week and adding one small thing. The trouble is, most people get seduced by big moves. They want the dramatic change, the instant transformation, the overnight success story. But those stories are misleading. Overnight success is almost always the result of years of quiet, consistent work that no one saw. People see the moment the ice breaks, not the long pressure that made it crack. They see the tree in full bloom, not the seasons it spent underground, roots pushing deep into the soil. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." It's true, but here's the part most people miss. Planting it is only the first step. Watering it, every day, even when you don't see anything happening, that's what matters. The tree doesn't grow because of one massive watering. It grows because of the small, steady care over time. Consistency is also the antidote to doubt. When you commit to daily action, you give yourself evidence, real proof, that you are moving forward. Even on days when your mind whispers, "This isn't working," you can look at your actions and say, "Yes, it is. I'm building something." That proof builds confidence, and confidence fuels more action, creating a loop that keeps you going. I've seen this play out with health goals. A friend of mine decided he wanted to run a marathon. He had never been a runner, could barely make it around the block without gasping for air. If he had focused only on the distance, it would have crushed him. But he focused on a daily run. At first it was just half a mile. Then a mile. Then slowly, almost without realizing it, his body adapted. Months later he crossed the finish line of his first marathon. The crowd cheered for that final moment, but the real victory was in the countless mornings he laced up his shoes when no one was watching. The wealthy treat consistency as an investment. They understand that the habits you build are more valuable than the results you get in the short term. A single act of saving money doesn't make you rich, but the habit of saving, repeated over years, absolutely will. A single conversation doesn't build a network, but the habit of reaching out to people and staying connected transforms opportunities over time. And maybe that's the hardest truth to accept. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's repetitive. Can be boring. It can feel like you're moving at a snail's pace while others are sprinting past you. But the sprint burns out. The steady pace lasts. Life has a way of rewarding those who can keep going when the excitement fades, when the applause stops, when no one's keeping score but you. It's easy to take a big leap when motivation is high. It's harder to take the small step on a day when you feel tired, uninspired, or doubtful. But those are the days that define your future. Those are the days that separate the dreamers from the doers. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "A person with a vision controls their destiny." I would add, only if they're willing to take consistent steps toward it, even when no one's looking, even when it feels like nothing's happening. Because something is happening. Every action is a seed. Every habit is a root. And one day, without warning, you'll look around and realize you're standing in the middle of a forest you planted years ago, one small seed at a time. That's how success works. Not in bursts, but in quiet, steady growth that compounds until it's too big to ignore. I want you to think back to a time when you tried something new and it didn't work out. Maybe it was a business idea you were excited about, maybe a skill you were learning, or maybe it was a personal goal like getting fit or learning a language. At first you had energy. You could almost see the finish line in your mind. But then somewhere along the way you hit a wall. Things didn't go as planned. You made mistakes. You felt embarrassed. And that voice inside your head started whispering, maybe this just isn't for you. That's the moment where most people stop. They take failure as a final judgment instead of what it really is, information. The truth is, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the road to success. It's the toll you pay for getting where you want to go. The people who achieve extraordinary things don't avoid failure. They build a relationship with it. They see it not as an enemy but as a teacher. Every setback, every wrong turn, every closed door carries a lesson that shapes the next step. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "Every great work has had to pass through the fire of criticism and opposition." I'd add that it also passes through the fire of mistakes and disappointment. You cannot learn how to swim by reading about water. At some point you have to jump in, get wet, and probably choke on a few mouthfuls before you figure out how to float. Thomas Edison is the most famous example. When reporters asked him how he felt about failing over 1,000 times before creating a working light bulb, he didn't even flinch. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Imagine that level of perspective. Most people quit after 3 failed attempts, maybe 5. Edison saw each failure as simply one step closer to getting it right. That's why he got there, and why so many others didn't. I once met a young man who wanted to be a chef. He worked in a small restaurant kitchen, starting with the simplest tasks: washing vegetables, chopping onions, cleaning the counters. One day he was given the chance to cook a special dish for the first time. He was nervous but excited. He followed the recipe exactly, tasted it, and it was terrible. Not just could use some salt, terrible, completely inedible. He felt humiliated. For a moment he thought about quitting and finding something easier. But his mentor pulled him aside and said, "Good. Now you know one more way not to cook it." That moment changed everything for him. He realized mistakes weren't a reason to quit. They were a reason to keep going, because each mistake removed one more wrong option from the table. Years later, he became the head chef at a fine dining restaurant, creating dishes people now travel to taste. That wouldn't have happened if he'd walked away after that first disaster. Failure is like a mirror. It shows you exactly where your weaknesses are, and if you're willing to look without flinching, you can use that information to get stronger. But most people turn away. They don't want to see their flaws. They take the discomfort of failure as a sign to retreat instead of a signal to adjust. The wealthy, the highly successful treat that discomfort as data. They analyze it, learn from it, and try again, often faster than before. There's a story about Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, who became the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. Growing up, her father would ask her at the dinner table, "What did you fail at this week?" If she didn't have an answer, he'd look disappointed. To him, failure meant she was trying new things, stepping outside her comfort zone. That mindset shaped how she approached her business. When she was creating her first product, she heard no from countless manufacturers. Instead of taking it as rejection, she took it as a sign to refine her pitch. That ability to keep going when doors closed is what turned her idea into a billion-dollar company. Failure also strips away illusions. You might think you know the right path, but until you test it, you don't. A failed approach forces you to reevaluate, to get creative, to find solutions you would never have considered if things had gone smoothly. Some of the most brilliant ideas are born out of what looks like failure at first. Post-it notes, for example, came from a failed attempt to create a super strong adhesive. The glue turned out weak, almost useless, except it stuck lightly enough to be repositioned, which eventually became one of the most popular office supplies in history. The danger isn't in failing, it's in failing and then doing nothing with it. When you fail, you're standing at a crossroads. One road says, "This is proof you're not good enough." The other says, "This is proof you're trying, and now you know more than you did yesterday." The choice you make in that moment determines everything. If you take the first road, you'll spend your life playing it safe, avoiding risks and wondering what if. If you take the second, you'll keep moving forward, learning, adjusting, and getting closer to your goal. I've seen this with artists, entrepreneurs, athletes, you name it. The ones who make it aren't always the most talented in the beginning. They're the ones who can take a hit, get back up, and try again. They build resilience like a muscle. Every time they recover from a setback, they grow stronger, more resourceful, more capable. And that resilience becomes their greatest asset because it means they can keep going long after others have quit. There's another piece to this. Failure teaches humility. It reminds you that you don't have all the answers, that you have room to grow. Humility keeps you open to feedback, to learning from others, to seeing opportunities where pride might blind you. And in that humility, there's freedom. You stop trying to be perfect and instead focus on progress. The rich don't just survive failure, they mine it for gold. They ask, "What went wrong? What can I do differently? How can I turn this into an advantage?" That's how businesses pivot, how careers evolve, how ideas get refined until they work. If you're willing to treat every failure as a stepping stone instead of a wall, you can walk a path most people will never dare to take. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Failure never really goes away. Even when you succeed, even when you're at the top of your game, you will still make mistakes. The difference is by then you'll have learned that a mistake is just a moment. It's not your identity and it's not your destiny. You'll have built the kind of confidence that says, "I've fallen before and I know how to get up." That's a kind of wealth that goes beyond money. It's the wealth of knowing you can handle whatever comes. So maybe the question isn't, how can I avoid failure? Maybe the question is, how can I get better at failing? Because when you can fail well, when you can extract the lesson, adjust your approach, and keep moving, you make failure powerless over you. It becomes just another part of the process, another brushstroke in the bigger picture you're painting. And one day you'll look back at all the moments you thought were the end, and you'll realize they were really just the beginning of something better. There is a certain magic in the way wealthy and successful people think about time, and it's not the kind of magic you see in movies. It's the kind of magic that quietly reshapes their reality while others are too distracted to notice. To them, time isn't just hours on a clock or days on a calendar. It's currency. Every second is an investment and they are meticulous about where they spend it. Most people treat time like loose change, letting it slip away in little drips. A few hours scrolling, a few days procrastinating, a few weeks waiting for the right moment. But those who truly build extraordinary lives understand that the right moment isn't something you wait for. It's something you create right now with the time you have in your hands. I remember a conversation with a man who had built a multi-million-dollar real estate empire from scratch. I asked him what the turning point in his life was, expecting a story about a lucky deal or a big break. Instead, he said, "The day I realized my time was worth more than my money." He explained that when he was younger, he would do everything himself, cleaning apartments, fixing broken doors, chasing late rent, because he thought saving money was the smartest thing to do. But then one day he calculated the hours he was spending on these tasks and realized that if he used that same time to make deals, he could earn far more than he was saving. So he hired help even when it felt like he couldn't afford it, and poured his reclaimed hours into high-value work. That shift didn't just change his business, it changed his life. Time is the one resource you can never get back. You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose opportunities and create new ones. But once an hour is gone, it's gone forever. This is why the wealthy guard their schedules like treasure chests. They say no more often than they say yes, because they understand that every yes is really a trade. When you say yes to one thing, you're automatically saying no to something else. Most people don't think about that trade until it's too late. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you agreed to something that didn't really matter to you, just to be polite, to avoid conflict, or because you didn't want to seem rude? How many mornings have been eaten up by unplanned conversations, or afternoons lost to aimless browsing online, or entire evenings spent on tasks that someone else could have done in half the time? The wealthy don't see these as harmless habits. They see them as leaks in the bucket, tiny drains that, over time, can empty an entire reservoir of potential. One entrepreneur I know has a rule. If a task doesn't move him closer to his goals, create joy, or deepen his relationships, it doesn't go on his calendar. Harsh, maybe. But he lives by the belief that time is life in disguise, and that wasting time is, in a very real sense, wasting life. It's why he sets his mornings aside for his most important work. No calls, no emails, no interruptions. Just the deep, focused effort that creates the results most people think are luck when they see them from the outside. The other part of this is that wealthy people don't just manage their time, they multiply it. They do this by leveraging systems, delegating tasks, and building structures that work even when they're not there. Imagine two people running a bakery. The first wakes up at 4 a.m., bakes bread all day, and serves customers until evening. The second spends a year training staff, refining recipes, and creating a process. Eventually, the second bakery runs smoothly without them, freeing them to open another location, or 10 more. The first baker may work harder, but the second baker works in a way that turns hours into assets. There's a powerful story about Warren Buffett and Bill Gates being asked to write down the one word that had made the most difference in their success. Without seeing each other's answers, they both wrote the same word: focus. Focus is the ability to treat time like it matters more than almost anything else. It's the refusal to scatter your energy on 100 little things when you could channel it into the few that actually change your life. And yet, the real trap is that most of us think we have more time than we do. We tell ourselves, I'll start next month, or I'll do it when things settle down. But life never really settles down. There will always be another distraction, another crisis, another reason to delay. The wealthy understand this and act accordingly. They don't wait for the perfect time, they use the time they have and make it perfect through action. I once met a woman who built a thriving online business while working a full-time job and raising 2 kids. Her secret wasn't that she had more hours in the day, it was that she used them differently. She said, "If I have 30 minutes, I work like it's 3 hours. No TV, no idle chatter, no multitasking. Just laser focus." And those 30-minute blocks, stacked day after day, turned into a business that eventually freed her from her job and allowed her to spend more time with her family than she ever thought possible. There's a certain peace that comes with treating your time with respect. It stops you from chasing every shiny thing and keeps you grounded in what really matters. And ironically, it's not about filling every second with work. It's about making sure the time you spend is intentional. The wealthy schedule rests the same way they schedule meetings because they know burnout destroys productivity. They schedule learning because they see knowledge as the fuel for future income. They schedule thinking time because some of the best ideas come in the quiet moments when you're not rushing from one thing to the next. One of the saddest things I've seen is people who finally achieve financial freedom only to realize they spent their healthiest years grinding away at things that didn't bring them joy. They worked for decades thinking they were buying future freedom, but in the process they spent the most precious currency they had: time. The wealthy understand that the point isn't just to have more money, it's to have more control over your days. It's to wake up and choose how you spend your hours, not just survive them. The truth is, everyone gets the same 24 hours. The difference between those who thrive and those who struggle is in how they spend them. The wealthy spend their hours like they're making a masterpiece, careful with every stroke. They resist the urge to fill every gap with noise. They ask, Is this the highest and best use of my time right now? And if the answer is no, they shift. They are ruthless with distractions not because they are cold, but because they understand that saying yes to the wrong thing means saying no to the right one. And maybe that's the real magic. Knowing that time isn't just something that passes, it's something you shape. It's clay in your hands waiting for you to decide what to make of it. Most people let it slip through their fingers, but a few choose to mold it with intention. And in the end, that choice, the choice of how to spend your time, is the one that decides everything else. And there you have it. A journey through the mindset, habits, and quiet disciplines that separate dreamers from doers. If you felt even one spark of clarity today, imagine what staying connected could ignite in you tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button. Not because it's a formality, but because every insight you collect is a brick in the empire you're building. Like this video if it resonated and share your thoughts in the comments. What's the one change you're willing to make today that your future self will thank you for? Your answer might just inspire someone else to take their first step.